Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant, authentic, and on-brand second half. If you find yourself on a podcast platform, please don't forget to subscribe and rate this conversation. Share it with your friends. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe and ring that bell so you miss no more of these amazing guests. Today, we are going to be talking about perfectionism. My guest has been in a battle against perfectionism, which I believe most of us have at some point in our life. And she's going to share what it took for her to return to what she now deems her authentic self, warts and all. Her new book, Becoming Flawesome, helps readers to uncover their path back to themselves and in turn to live into their flawsomeness. My guest today is Kristina Lakhiani. She's an international speaker, entrepreneur, and the author of her new book, Becoming Flawesome. She's also the co-founder of Mind Valley. Kristina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Gina, thank you so much for having me and for welcoming me to your platform.
Today, friends, Kristina isn't joining us from across the world. She's in the middle of the night. So let's jump right in, Kristina, and let's talk about the journey that you've been on to battle perfectionism.
Well, I believe that we are all perfectionists. I think women, of course, relate to the word perfectionism much more than men, but men have their own version of perfectionism. And yeah, I was born in Soviet Union as the only child of my parents. So I guess I hadn't. It was written in my stars that I had to become perfectionist because there was no other choice. And I keep the battle going because this is a quality in me which I don't think I can ever eradicate, but my ranks have grown. I've realized that so many women struggle with that. So now it's not a lonely battle.
Yes. Now you started Mind Valley in your apartment, right? So you understand what it is to start something and have it just grow to a global scale. How did that journey help you either struggle more with your perfectionism or learn to let it go?
Well, Mind Valley is a little bit like a child for me. I saw it being born, and now it's been more than 20 years. So I think it's like with children, you see them every day, and you don't realize that they've grown until you see somebody else's baby. We had a dinner with friends yesterday, and they had, I think, 3-week-old baby, and I just couldn't take my eyes off that baby because it was the tiniest little thing I've ever seen. And I know my own babies have been the same way. So I think with a lot of things that we create in professional life as well with our projects, we don't always realize the journey we have made. And it seems like it's the same baby day in and day out, but it changes, it grows, and it matures, it becomes very different. Now, when it comes to perfectionism, it was I think Mind Valley was just one of the aspects of my life. I like to say that was my midlife crisis. At the age of 40, I had reached the success I thought I needed to reach. And Mind Valley was definitely an instrumental part of that because it was, and it still is a success, but it also gave me the kind of life that I could be proud of, traveling and doing the things that I like and, this perfectly Instagrammable version of a life. And with all of that, at the age of 40, I realized that I wasn't happy. That something was very, very wrong. And the worst part about it was that I felt really guilty for not feeling happy. So Mind Valley in itself maybe wasn't a contributor to my perfectionism or to struggle with it, but it was definitely that factor which highlighted the whole issue. So I didn't struggle with perfection. I mean, I didn't fight perfectionism from the very beginning. It's more like a symptom, or not a symptom, sorry, it's a side effect of what happened. My journey back to myself started with the realization that despite having reached all my goals, I wasn't happy. And then when I started looking for my way back to me, that's when I discovered that among other dragons, I had a perfectionism. But that's not the worst quality that I have.
Well, it's really refreshing to talk to someone who has said effectively, okay, I went after this, I made it happen, it was successful, it gave me the life I wanted, and still I wasn't happy. I think often there is this idea that the things we do are going to make us happy, when I think it's more of an inside game. It's who we're becoming. And that inside version, I think, is where the happiness comes from. But we often put it when I make this amount of money, or when I live in this house, or when I don't know, accomplished whatever it is. Would you agree that sometimes it's in the pursuing of things that we lose ourselves, and the unhappiness is the disconnection?
Mm. Well, we definitely lose ourselves in pursuing our goals, and the goals which we actually set for ourselves. And, you know, I know it's tempting to say that society wants us to be rich and famous and whatnot. No, we want that for ourselves, not society, not your parent, not your child, not your partner. We subscribe to those goals. That's why we go for them. And yes, we do lose ourselves in that journey very often, because when we face the choice between success and happiness, our natural inclination is to go for success rather than happiness, because success is something tangible and understandable. Success requires a certain sequence of steps. Very often nowadays we think that success requires hard work, sweat and blood, sacrifices, hustle. All these things we understand. They may seem unpleasant, but this is something which we know how to do. So we go for success thinking that this is a sure path, without thinking, although deep inside we know that success doesn't bring happiness. We know that. That's why there are all those questions floating about. Somehow I start coming across this question over and over again, and it irritates me. The question, would you rather be successful and sad, or happy and poor? And this is such pile of nonsense. But we know deep inside that success is not a guarantee of happiness, yet we choose success because happiness sounds like a gamble.
Yeah.
So whenever, and we've all faced that choice at some point in life. Younger people would face the choice: should I go study what is probably going to give me a well-paying job, or should I do something which I truly enjoy doing? That's why a lot of artists are told by their families that, music is not a true profession, or writing books is not a real job. Or, for example, should I pursue a corporate career, or should I do something what I love, my craft? Corporate career seems such a sure way to be rich, and we think that happy. Or for women, should I do a family, or should I do a job? We choose things which we think will make us successful, not make us happy.
Interesting. But I do think I've heard a lot of people on my podcast have said exactly what you said. They pursued the things they thought they wanted. And I think they did want those things, but we don't know until we get somewhere and we look back, when we have that perspective, where we might have gone, for lack of a better term, wrong, or maybe how we got off course in that alignment with ourselves. Because
I was having a conversation with one marketer recently, and he said we don't know how to want properly. And I think, in that conversation, I took it lightly, but now that you said what you said, I suddenly, it hit home that that's exactly the question. We don't know how to want. Because very often, why do we choose a certain career over our passion? Because we think that we want money more than we want to do something that we love. We think that if we have enough money, we'll have time to do something that we love. That something that we love, the only place for it is in our hobbies. That being serious, being responsible, being professional means doing the things that we don't love. And that's not surprising. We're brought up on that belief. We're brought up on the belief that success is purchased with sweat, blood, tears, sacrifice, hard work, sleepless night.
Mm.
We believe in that. And if I were to tell you that this is nonsense, most of the people will be incensed. Because this is the only examples that we see. We only see people achieving success through doing things that they don't love.
And there's a voice out there, say in the personal development world, because I've had to be very choosy about who I allow to speak into my life. Do you know what I mean? Virtually speak into my life, because it's like, well, you don't want it bad enough. Well, if you don't have it, it's because you're somehow deficient. You know, there's like this kind of rise and grind, and you're, like you said, the blood, sweat, and tears, and be miserable. And if you do that long enough, eventually then you can live the life that you want to live.
You know, well, first of all, I have to refer to research, because you don't need research to know that success doesn't bring happiness, because just look at a lot of successful people. A lot of them are quite miserable. But there is research that says that you're much more likely to achieve success if you are happy.
Mm.
So it is proven. But with that said, it still seems like a gamble, because we don't see examples, because our society we adore the idea of, you know, despite everything, through all the struggles, that person achieved success. And then they were happily ever after, but only fairy tales ended in happily ever after. Mm-hmm. We know in real life that's not how it works. Now, you see, when I was a kid, I am a perfectionist and a very ambitious child. I studied really well. I studied so well that when I graduated from school, the president of my country gave me the medal for being the best student, one of the best students in the country. So I know the hard work path. And every time when my mom went to school, the teacher would say that Kristina is doing well. Obviously, everybody knows I was doing well. But, you know, this subject, she should put more effort, because she's not really good at that. So my whole school, I was being told what I have to do more of, and that was what I was the worst at.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the definition of success in school. That's the definition of success, to the point where the president gives you the medal at the end of the school. Now, I should imagine that, but I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of your listeners had a similar experience where they had to work on the things that they were bad at to be successful. Imagine if my mom came to school and the teacher said that, yeah, Kristina is doing well. Of course she's doing well. Some subjects are maybe not so well, but, you know, she's really good at physics. Maybe she should do more of that. Imagine if you spent all your effort, all your time on the things that you were good at, that you truly loved, that you actually managed, you could succeed effortlessly. This is not the paradigm in which we live. In our society, we love the idea that you have to suffer. Success through punishment, through fear of failure. While you are being lazy, other people are hustling and achieving what you could be achieving. We don't see a lot of examples of success through encouragement. But if you, and I know you have raised children, if you've raised children, that you know that works as well. That works very well.
Mm-hmm. We've taken a very different path in our house, Kristina. I have a daughter who's an artist, and she has taken that to tattoo artistry, and she's just really gifted at art in general. And since she was young, and I've always said, you know, it's important that you use your gifts. As people listen to us, I think there's so much value to the gifts that we've been given. And there's a reason that we have those gifts. And it's what sets us apart from other people, is the way that we show up in the world, the things that we do, how we do them. You know, there's a million podcasts in the world, but no two are the same, right? And it's like in your company, I don't even know how many people work inside of what you do with the mindfulness meditation, all the other things, but how each person speaks, their voice touches someone different, right? We attract different people and we accomplish different things because of our perspective and our gifts. And I think it's really important to what you're saying, that especially in midlife, I feel like we have done the whole run the race, and maybe it's a good time to step off the wheel and consider what it is that has been a longing in our heart or a niggling in our belly or anything like that. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about how your journey to writing this book, becoming Flawesome, and how you made that pivot after becoming successful and finding yourself not where you thought you would be emotionally.
It was that same 40 years when I started reevaluating everything about my life, because I was so puzzled, like why am I unhappy, and why do I feel so bad about being unhappy? And a lot of things changed at that time. And one of the things that I changed, I actually took sabbatical. I think I was, probably it was a depression, and I needed, when you stop functioning, and I just needed time off. So I took sabbatical for a few months, and then when I came back, I felt that I don't want to do the same things anymore. And I used to do marketing for about 15 years. I'm actually pretty good at that. In fact, I just recently I was chatting to, I just mentioned to a marketer, and I still enjoy it. But I've also always loved writing, apparently, without realizing that, because we are told that we have to do things that we don't enjoy, and we sometimes don't even notice that. We don't even notice our genius zone because of that. I didn't realize, now looking back, it's so obvious, but I didn't realize that I actually truly enjoyed writing until I had this crisis, and I came back, and I discovered myself being pulled into speaking on stage, teaching, creating my own content and writing. Now I associate myself with a writer more than anything. It has always been there. I just never gave it enough attention, because I was busy doing the things that I wasn't good at. And that's how I ended up writing the book, because writers write. They can do all the other things. They can clean the room and wash the dishes, but sooner or later they'll come down to the computer and start writing, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that was just inevitable.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about what happens inside of you when you write. Let's talk about that pivot, holding a space for that in your life and making time for it. How do you feel when you write?
It's a release, because when you write, you have something to say. And if we talk about it a little bit more practically, in psychology there's this interesting technique called journaling, but not the journaling the way we understand it in personal growth, but in psychology it's journaling to process trauma. So I think it was I remember the family name Penbreaker, but I don't remember the first name. He's researched that a lot. So basically, if you have an emotional trauma, he suggests writing down your experiences and writing it down over and over again. So after a few rounds of describing it, you actually release it. So it's just the form of releasing your burden. Maybe another analogy would be when you're pregnant and the baby's coming, you can't hold it in, it has to come out.
I think being creative in any way, shape, or form is a form of birthing. It's because it's a part of you that's coming out. And I find that a lot of women that I speak to in this season of life, Kristina, 45 and beyond, they're reconnecting with, or for the first time acknowledging, this side of them that's creative in some way, shape, or form. And the joy that's connecting with that release, as you say.
And I think the most important thing here is that usually your biggest contribution to the world comes through that. Not through that struggle that we put on our whole life, but through that. And it's this leap of faith that we have to do, because, as I said, we're used to the idea that you have to struggle and work hard, and any skill requires that. But there's a difference between professionalism and true mastery or true genius. Maybe you see in my background, I have a few musical instruments. One of them is actually...
I was going to ask you about that piano.
Well, I have a harp, but it's in the dark corner as well.
Oh, I do see it. Yes, it's beautiful.
So in harp, there is this one technique where you pluck arpeggios like one after another, and it requires a lot of practice because you have to practice the skill, but for it to work, you have to let go. And that's the thing that we don't understand. We understand the practice, the drilling, the trying hard, the proverbial 10,000 hours to become professional. But for the genius, you have to be able to let go and trust that your fingers, your body knows what to do, and to stop controlling. And that's exactly what happens when you do what you love to do. And it's such a scary thing because it's a leap of faith, but that's the difference between just professional, and there are so many professionals, and true genius.
It's scary to let go, isn't it? We've spent a lot of
Especially
time.
if you're a perfectionist.
Right?
Because what perfectionists understand is trying harder and working more, putting more effort.
Right, because it's all about what you can do.
Yeah. I've learned it so well. So how do I let go? Teach me. I know it's important.
And what have you learned? What have you learned about that?
Well, the more important it is, the more we tense, right? Yeah. The more we try hard. And the letting go is the opposite of that. Letting go is not really my forte. I think this, I don't remember the name of this writer, but his books just a few years ago were super popular that was about the art of letting go. What I have learned, that the only thing or the only person standing between you and well, pretty much anything you want in life, whether it's the stroke of genius or your happiness or the happily ever after, is usually the only thing standing between you and that goal is yourself, especially if you're a perfectionist.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of fear in perfectionism, though. Would you agree?
Sure. Yeah. It's fear through and through, because first of all, there's fear to trust anyone and to let go, but then there is also fear to try, because if you can only go for win, then you'd rather not try than risk losing.
That's the profound thought, isn't it? If the only thing you want is to win, you can't try because you might lose, when actually the winning comes through the losing ultimately. Or the failure leads to the success, because that's where we learn.
And the winning is not the only thing in life that's worth pursuing.
And it's interesting what we perceive as winning. I think it changes from season to season in life, don't you think?
Well, definitely. So as I wrote the book, of course, the question that a lot of people ask me about this, trying to make the New York Times bestsellers list. And so many well-meaning people would worry, like, but, what if you don't? But the thing is that, it's not really about making a list or achieving that award. Actually, for a writer, the most important thing is to, apart from expression, is actually to leave a meaningful mark. So what is more important to me, to make the New York Times bestsellers list, or to know that my book has touched million lives? When you look into the essence of things, then a lot of the decorations become irrelevant. And for me, making it to the lists is only the springboard to the actual goal that is out there.
Right. The greater purpose of the book is not to make a list, it's to make an impact.
True.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I'm sure it will, because I think our intention that we live by is sending those it's like a drop in a pebble in a lake. We're creating ripples in our world when we're living with intention, imperfectly, of course. And I think that imperfection is important because people feel like they can relate to you. They can see something of themselves in you.
And you know, this winning story is also about imperfection. If you look at, for example, movies, you know, a lot of the greatest, there were a lot of examples where a movie that would win the Oscar, you know, the movie of the year, would be forgotten next to the one which didn't make it.
Yeah.
So does it really matter? But there is imperfection in that life's path as well. So how many books have actually made it after the author passed away? Because if you are leaving a meaningful mark, it will matter. Eventually, it will matter.
Mm-hmm.
It will matter more than anything else.
There's a lot of artists, musicians, and authors who posthumously their work became recognized. Like they didn't necessarily see the full volume of the impact that they had. Maybe in their lifetime, they didn't see it.
So the question is, did they still feel at peace that they had expressed themselves, or did they feel disappointed? We don't know that, of course, and I mean, it's everybody's journey. But what I'm trying to say is that maybe one more thing we should re-evaluate as a society is the idea of winning per se. Of course, competitions are fun, but if we just take them as it is, just fun, and not as a definition of men. We were talking about perfectionism. I know your audience is women, but I know women feel curious about men. You know, for men, achievement is their version of perfectionism. We women struggle with perfectionism. They struggle with equating their own worth to their achievements.
Mm-hmm. And because we're men and women living in a world like men and women, we misunderstand the other person's struggle.
Oh, yeah.
A little dissonance there.
It's not like another person wants you to understand their struggle. They want you to think that they're perfect and you to feel inadequate. Well, not so maliciously, but very often we don't want to share our struggles.
You know, it's so important, I think, as we get older, to lean in to those imperfections and really come to terms with the things that maybe we've been hiding from ourselves, which we don't really technically hide things from ourselves, but we ignore them or we put them off or we make excuses for them or whatever. There's such freedom in coming into our own. I talk to so many women on my podcast, and that's kind of what's happening for them. It's like they turn a corner and they're like, okay, that's it. I'm tired of this running on that wheel or trying to achieve the perfection, you know, whether it comes with, for women, a lot of the time is around aging, right? How does my face look? How does my skin look? How, are my boobs like a little too low? How many rolls between my boobs and my hips, you know? And it's such a freedom that I'm finding a lot of women are fighting for, in that full acceptance of where they're at, instead of pushing for an ideal that, first of all, they can look back and go, I didn't technically reach it then either. You know, like at what point do we get to live the life that we've been given instead of trying to reach something outside of ourselves?
It's because perfection is unsustainable. And Salvador Dali, I believe he's the one who said that. He said, don't be afraid of perfectionism. You will never reach it.
Just leave it over there.
Yeah.
Set it off to the side. Now, how did you come up with this wonderful title, Becoming Flawesome? I really love the title of your book.
Well, the book, the title found the book. When I started writing a book, it had a whole sheet of working titles to choose from. And then when the book was ready, I actually truly believe that the title has to be given to the piece of work at the end. And yeah, when the book was written, I came across the word somewhere on the internet. I adopted it because it was an orphan word. Nobody wanted it. Nobody claimed it. Maybe somebody wanted it, I don't know, but nobody claimed it. I redefined it a little bit because there are a lot of stray definitions to this word. But when I saw it, I knew that was the title. Before that, I needed to do a brainstorm. But then when I saw it, it was there.
So how do you define Flawesome?
It's recognizing your imperfections and thriving in your imperfections, realizing that your imperfections are not just something to come to peace with, but they probably hold your biggest value.
Now there's a provocative thought. The thing we've been avoiding is where the magic has been hiding.
Of course, that's why we're so mediocre, all of us.
That's really a provocative thought. Yeah. There's something to it, though. Being willing to be a beginner, being willing to be, in our own mind, look a little foolish or feel a little foolish. There's some freedom to that.
And it's that same thing. If you are out just to win, you are very likely not going to even try. It's like with children, I know it's a very silly analogy, but it's when the child learns to walk, they are okay with falling down. And that doesn't stop them. So a lot of the times you being at peace with yourself, being imperfect, gives you the necessary courage and acceptance to go out there and challenge yourself, because you're imperfect and you don't need to prove anything to yourself. So you can afford failing. You can afford being wrong. You can afford being imperfect, because you know that you're still worthy of your love.
Worthiness. What is the correlation between perfectionism and worthiness?
Perfectionism is definitely a worthiness killer. I recently saw interesting stats that 85% of adults and adolescents have low self-esteem, which in essence means that they don't feel themselves worthy. 85% of us don't think we're worthy. And perfectionism is definitely a very slippery slope, which will make you feel unworthy, because if your only acceptable standard is perfection, and as Salvador Dali said, you will never achieve it, then naturally everything which doesn't fit that standard is something to be ashamed of, is something to feel bad about, is something to feel unworthy because of that. So yeah, perfectionism, I believe that obsession with perfectionism leads to the dark side. Because, the way our brain works, you mentioned, you can't lie to yourself. Actually, we lie to ourselves all the time. It's an interesting thing, but the way our brain works, whenever it sees the discrepancy between reality and our aspiration, it starts filling the gap to make us feel better. So when your aspiration is a perfect version of you and your reality doesn't correspond to that aspiration, your brain will trick you into not seeing that imperfect picture, which is so hard to face. And then the dark side appears, and then, and then we get lost. And then somewhere in the middle age, we say, what's wrong? I've done everything I was supposed to do. Why am I not happy? And how on earth do I dare not to be happy? It all comes from that dark side, which is created by the perfectionism.
So the bedfellows to perfectionism are guilt and shame.
For sure. Yeah, 100%.
I think that's...
perfectionism is a happiness killer as well. We have this wonderful teacher, Sriko Marau, who says that, you're not happy because everything is perfect. Everything becomes perfect when you are happy.
It's a paradigm shift, isn't it? It's what you're focusing on. I think that's the work to be done, isn't it, Kristina? It's shifting our paradigm from what we have inherently accepted socially, could be culturally, depending on your family, the place you live, what success is, or what is acceptable. Even maybe not before success is what's an acceptable way to live your life. I was saying earlier, like with my daughters, I've fought hard to encourage them to pursue their gift, because I think each person has a gift that needs to be expressed in order for the world to be its best expression of itself, right? You know how maybe no one's heard of them. Many of the people that I interview are just people with a mission and a message and a passion for something. And maybe people don't know their name, but this person living out their passion, writing the book, doing whatever it is that they do, there's some magic. Every time I meet someone, there's magic to them because they are leaning in to that gift that's inside of them, that thing that's drawing them. It's like it's drawing them to the light that is in alignment with them. And it's such a wonderful thing to meet people who are leaning into that scary thing. To your point, it is scary. They don't know how it's going to work out. And sometimes they literally take a U-turn, like, okay, I was all corporate and now I'm an artist, or I was all corporate and now I'm, I don't know, doing marketing or whatever it is. And it's like, they're so different, but they're so much more, to your point, happy or content with the life that they're living, even though it's more technically insecure than the steady path of corporate, which most people follow. I didn't follow corporate, but many of the women I did talk to
there's nothing secure about corporate or a job.
But I think we're told that, right?
It's an illusion of security, and of course, it's not the topic of our conversation. But talk to anyone who understands, well, for that matter, financial freedom. They will tell you that there's nothing secure in corporate or having a job. And well, if anything, COVID of a few years ago had proven that nothing is certain. Nothing is certain. And yeah, take any economic crisis, the things that fail are the ones that we thought were rock
secure.
solid. Yeah.
But see, the encouragement in that, Kristina, as I'm hearing what you're sharing, is that's the gift, is because those things aren't what they say they are. Why not take the risk, as we would have considered it, to move toward the thing that is closer to your heartbeat as a person?
One benefit I can tell you for a fact, whether you're going to reach success or not, both paths are actually not 100% certain. But at least on the path where you do something that you love and that's meaningful for you, you're going to enjoy the journey.
It's so true. And I think it's kind of exhilarating to take a different path, but that's my personality, I think. I think it's interesting to try something different. It is challenging, though. If somebody's doing like a reinvention in midlife and they've never done something like that before, you don't know. Like, you really have no idea a lot of these women are like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just started going.
But we live in a fairly safe environment nowadays. 100 years ago, that was impossible. Now we have that opportunity. And I think the society is going to change. It's just that we still don't see a lot of scenarios of that. We see the other scenarios. If you don't mind, I'll share one more little story from my past. I mentioned that I was born in Soviet Union, and in Soviet Union they produced Olympians and Olympic champions, like
Nadia Comaneci.
Like they were, a plantation for that. The thing is that they had this institution which was called Olympic Reserves, and what they did is that they went to kindergartens and they plucked the kids who had something promising. So when I was 4 years old, they plucked me out for gymnastics, and they plucked me out for gymnastics. And that's one of the earliest memories in my life because it was incredibly traumatic. They took me to this Olympic Reserves and they put me into splits straight away. I was crying. It was physical pain the whole 1 hour that I was there. And when I came home, I begged my mom not to take me back there. So of course, naturally, you might say that I just didn't have what it takes to become an Olympic champion. Next year, when I was 5, they came back and they picked me up for figure skating because I obviously had what it takes. Maybe I didn't have the personality, but what I'm telling you, that's the story is that usually what our society sees and the stories that we are being told, the stories that we are that are told over and over again, like this mythology, this that whole thing that is being passed from generation to generation is about the people who have survived that mincing machine and come on top. And that's what we idealize without realizing that on that path to this 1% succeeding despite everything, a lot of waste material has been created. I was a waste material. Until this very day, I have a very troubled relationship with sports. I was broken and tossed away. We don't talk about waste material. We idealize the winners and close our eyes on the fact that there is a lot of broken souls. And I was lucky that I was broken so early at the first training. Imagine if I had spent my whole childhood sacrificing everything and still not winning the golden medal. That's also waste material. You know how many athletes are out there who didn't win a golden medal, who didn't go to Olympic Games? They're all waste material. In our society's perception, they're not. As human beings, they're not.
Right.
But our society perceives that as a failure to highlight the winners. Now, the path to success, which is achieved through encouragement, through doing what you love, doesn't create waste material.
It's such a, it's, I suppose, with anything, there's always, you know, the darker side. And it's interesting to think about that as waste material, and how in our own lives have we deemed something as unimportant when actually it was very important, you know. And I feel like a lot of women in midlife, possibly men too, but I genuinely just speak to women mostly, is that turning to face it. And the thing that pops into my mind right now, Kristina, is when we reach that point that we're willing to turn and face maybe where we were out of alignment, or maybe where we got off course or didn't even see the path to begin with, the emotional journey that it takes to almost forgive ourselves and then give ourselves permission to move forward. It's not a lost cause. Like a lot of time that's a mindset, like it's too late, I can't do it, blah, 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 blah. But I think, you know, when I think about the title of your book, Becoming Flawesome, I think within that thought is we can always, like a child, get back up and start to walk again.
Yes, definitely. It's never finished until it's truly the last breath.
Now that emotional journey, when you hit 40 and you felt guilt because obviously you shoulded it all over yourself, right? And you just thought, why am I such a failure in being happy? Back to your perfectionism. I'm imperfect, darn it, and I'm not even happy about it. What was that emotional journey for you? You took a sabbatical. And I'm just kind of curious where you landed at the end of that sabbatical. What were your maybe 2 or 3 kind of biggest anchor points from that?
You know, I think the most liberating thought in that process was that the stress itself is not as damaging to you as the secondary stress. So analogy here would be, you know, when you wake up in the middle of the night because you have insomnia and you're tossing and turning, the fact that you're not sleeping is not as damaging to your body than when you start feeling really horrible about that. What's going on? Why am I not sleeping? So that stress about stress is much more damaging to you. So when I realized that thought, it actually was probably the beginning to healing. I wasn't happy the way I was, but at least I wasn't feeling bad about not being happy. I just took it for what it is. Okay, so I'm unhappy. Okay, I'm depressed. So what do we do next? And then another realization or good advice that helped me through the darkest moments was a song from Frozen 2 by Anna. I was forced to remove it from my book because of copyright issues. Apparently, you have to get permission from the owner of the song to use it, but I'm going to use the chance and tell everyone that it's a wonderful song with amazing lyrics, and it has immense wisdom in it. It's a song, I think it's called The Next Right Thing. So just look it up.
The Next Right Thing. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Kristina, if you had to give, let's say, 3 things that you want people to take away from your heart to theirs, what would you really want people to hear from this conversation? It's been very rich and deep, and it's been a real blessing for me. So what would you want people to take away from today?
God, there are so many things that I could say, but I think what comes to my mind right now, like if I were to take just one thing, if in relationship with yourself, replace judgment with kindness and curiosity. It's going to make the journey back to you so much easier.
That grace. Yeah, I love that. Kristina, how can people find you and your book, which is out this week?
Of course, the book is on all the bookshelves in US. I mean, in all the bookshops, and actually in July it will be even in the airports. But the best place to get the book is, of course, from mindvalley.com/books/Flawesome, because it comes with all the bonuses and add-ons and gifts and everything.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, Kristina, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule, squeezing me in at the very literal end of your day. I know you're busy. You've been traveling a lot, but this was a really precious time. I appreciate the wisdom that you brought to this, the gentle way that you brought it, the kindness, the groundedness that was in it, the honesty. I think that raw honesty is so valuable. And we need to, as humans, to sit face to face, eye to eye, and speak from our heart, because I think that's what we're longing for. And so I really want to honor you for showing up that way today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a very enjoyable conversation. So good end to my day.
Yeah. And next, toothbrush and pillow. Yes. Well, friends, today, as we wrap up with Kristina, I want to remind you that if you are driving, you can go to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 324, and then we'll have links to Kristina and her book. If you're on YouTube, it's literally right below. All you have to do is click that link to go get Kristina's book, Becoming Flawesome, and begin your own journey of overcoming perfectionism. Friends, this is a time of life. If you've lived from 18 to 48, that's 30 years. If you live from 48 to 78, that's another adult lifetime. There is so much more you can do. And I would encourage you to glean the beauty from that first half of your life, wherever you're at. Glean the beauty of where you've been and find the place that you want to go, and then have the courage to move forward, the curiosity to see what you could possibly do with this one wild and wonderful life that you have, and reach out to resources like Mind Valley or my podcast or Kristina's book, Becoming Flawesome, and encourage yourself. Maybe get a group of ladies together and read Becoming Flawesome together, and get a book club and figure out how you can create a community around this idea of aligning yourself with a life that feels like it's meant for you, because we all have something to live, give, and offer to the world around us. So I want to thank you so much for spending this time with Kristina and I today. And I look forward to bringing more inspirational stories, people, and strategies to you in the weeks to come. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this conversation, my friends. Thank you again. I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.